All right, we're live, Internet. How's everybody doing on this, what's about to be a rainy evening here in North Louisiana?
Yeah, it's just windy as hell down here in the south.
We're making it.
Yeah.
Everything missed you this weekend, right, Neysa?
I think so, but we'll see when I actually get home later tonight.
Okay. I'm saying back on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, no, that was all like 3 hours farther to the north.
Okay, just wanted to double check. So, let's see. We are going to be continuing on our bonus roundtable with the newer format that we are using. Can I get an introduction down the table?
I'm Knox. I am Knox. I am Chief Mischief Maker and Jank Lord, Resident Jank Lord, T-bonus action.
I am a Ninja Spence 21 resident chef and basically apparently master of burps on team bonus action.
That is legit. I have seen those videos.
I'm Neysa does cosplay. I am the resident thirsty tiefling hunter.
You don't hunt them, Neysa. You summon them. You just
Okay, yes,
you hold out a devil's food cake milkshake.
just hunting of a different flavor.
No, it's trapping because I mean, like I said, you hold a devil's food or devil's
Not a trap.
devil's food cake milkshake out your window, and it brings all the horns to the yard.
Dude.
I like my tieflings, but I'm also an ASMR lover, so I guess that I am angel cake then.
I'll say I will give you this one, Neysa. You are the tall drink of water to all tiefling thirst traps.
Yay.
I thought I was going to make a halfling joke there with that one.
Nah.
Oh, half jokes. We saw the new D&D movie today.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of Emily.
You might too.
I'm going to have to go see that movie. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about terrain. Now, last time we did dice, so we're going to kind of try to keep that same format. Knox, since you were not here, I need you to have a D20 or a D20 app open on your computer or phone, so that when we get towards the tail end of this, we're going to start calling it insight check instead of investigation check, because Emily brought up what we did last time. It makes more sense calling it insight. So, what we're talking about tonight, for anybody that's listening in, is terrain. The odds and ends, and all the way from the cheapest to the most fancy things you use to represent stuff that is blocking your opponents and players from seeing each other so they can't shoot each other easily. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So let me go ahead and open it up with a bit of a rapid fire question here. Everybody gets to answer this one real quick. Is terrain absolutely necessary?
No.
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 No, it is not. So let's expand on that one a little bit. So whoever wants to jump in, or else I'll start running my gob.
Terrain. Terrain is. Let's see. That's the best way to put this. Terrain is. It is the cherry on top. It is absolutely unnecessary. It is absolutely unnecessary, and it's absolutely unnecessary. It makes things it doesn't increase the immersion. It does make things better, but when I make it at home, I don't have them.
So you Spence, you're about to say something?
Yeah, that terrain, that as somebody that tried to dabble into making it whenever I first actually started to actually do a D&D campaign and such like that, it was just basically that it it had felt good at first to kind of have these things that I made, but it slowly became like complicated and overbearing to travel with because I used to bring it up to one of our game shops at the time that we had before that they had branded, and then it just became too much of a hassle. But essentially, that I agree with Knox that it is a fancy decoration prop, but that it is not necessary.
Neysa.
Okay. Um, I I kind of feel the same way. Like actual molded or sculpted stuff would definitely be too like cumbersome to haul around. Most of the games I play up at the game shop, um, if we do anything, we have like dry erase maps. I got really good early on at drawing like elevation changes on a two-dimensional map. I had ravines and like cliff sides and things, and I got really good at interpreting that for my players. Like, yes, it would have been nice to have had like foam stacks or something that I could have used to show that visually, um, but it is not a necessity. There are ways to do what you need to do to get things across without it in a two-dimensional frame. So,
I mean, I'm in the same boat with y'all on this one. Terrain is a really nice additive to increase the experience of the game. However, it's not necessary, especially if you have a party that's at the table that is very much paying attention, and you have a DM that is very good at describing the three-dimensional space you find yourselves in, and you can use theater of the mind for that to where you do not need it. Like, there's tons of videos on YouTube and everything about, look at this, look at that, and how wonderful it makes everything. So I get that. But if it's your at-home game, just you and your friends, it's not 100% necessary. But it does make it nice, though.
one point though, for in favor of terrain as more of a necessity is if you're playing a game that is like a lot more nitty gritty. There's a lot of Warhammer players up at our local game shop, and they have to have the terrain because they literally run so much off of like line of sight and like physical distances, scale model distances. So for games like Warhammer, or if you have a DM that is a stickler for the exact distancing, then you'll have that 3-inch tall cliff to simulate the 30-foot ravine because you have to have that to be able to calculate the hypotenuse, which is your direct connection of I shoot an arrow up there from down here. So, I mean, there can be instances where it is, quote, required, but I'd say that those are few and far between.
Now, yeah, with Warhammer, it is Warhammer terrain is legitimately necessary. It rules as written. You have to each player when you build the board. I know I don't know how, I can't remember exactly how it is in Warhammer. I know in War Machine and Hordes, each player chooses 2 pieces of terrain, and those pieces of terrain can be rocks, buildings, clumps of trees, water features. Each player picks 2, and at the beginning of the game, they take turns putting those terrain pieces out after the objectives are dropped out. So it's actually part of the game setup to do that. But I mean that's talking wargaming. So simulating environments is kind of crucial to them.
I was going to say we've done exactly what I thought we were going to do for the start of this roundtable. So the second question I have for y'all is, what exactly is terrain?
Stuff. And anything that can give that is even if you're going to use it, anything that is vaguely thing shaped. You need a bunch of huts. Grab a bunch of plastic cups. You need stepped cliffs. Put 3 books on the table. It up to and including highly detailed, handmade, or 3D printed buildings and castles, or the 1x1 square, the Dwarven Forge 1x1 squares that you actually physically build a corridor and a castle corridor or a cave layout with. Those things are amazing and awesome, and one 5-minute one look at a battle scene from Critical Role or Dimension 20 will show you just how amazing that can be. It is not necessary. Plus, there is a reason that you can go to Critical Role's TikTok and you can see Mercer's DM room. He does a lot of video. He does a bunch of videos and stuff like that. So I've seen a couple of them where he's actually building encounter maps, and he has a legitimate storage room that is as big as Hewitt's living room. Just for one shelf is fully stacked up with a bunch of little drawers for minis and shelves for bigger minis. The rest of the room is terrain pieces, which is the other issue with terrain, in that you gotta put it somewhere.
That's definitely on my agenda for later in the round table. Is where do you put it?
Yeah, I mean that basically for like my shop games that Neysa and then my other players that they know whenever that it was one of the first few things I had 3D printed was just like that this human head that we have dubbed it the baby head. Whenever that comes out, that means it is the big boss. But as to Nox's point that you can use like toys to like represent enemies and stuff, like anything, like pencils or anything to like delegate a fence, a door or something like that, if that your map making skills aren't, up to snuff or anything like that. But at the same time that that the fancy foam highly painted stuff, it is not necessary to basically have that immersion of the games.
I was just going to say that terrain is like the sheer definition of it is anything that is 3-dimensional that is used to set a scene. Literally, you can do it with salt and pepper shakers and a napkin holder on a Waffle House table. Please sponsor us. So, like my segue, and that's all I've really got to say. Like we've done the books things and stuff too. I'd just be repeating everybody else at this point.
Well, Neysa, you hit on a key part of the definition that everybody else was talking about, because there's actually a debate connected to terrain that I found when I was looking online. And that is, does the graph paper or the battle map you have count for terrain if you are drawing additional features on it to represent breaking line of sight? This is a rock, this is a change in elevation, so that everybody can then visualize what is happening better. And my answer to that is going to be yes, because it is a physical object being used to represent the theater of the mind, and the map itself is the terrain. because it is what you are looking at. This is where your characters are moving forward. How does everybody else feel about that?
I mean, yeah. Ultimately, yes. It map feature. Technically speaking, terrain is map features. But if you draw them on there, colloquially, terrain refers to objects on the table. Technically, terrain is hindrances and topography of the battle map. Whether it's drawn on there or placed on there, it's still the terrain. So,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, yes. It is. Yes. Drawn squiggly lines to represent trees because I'm a shitty artist. It counts as terrain.
Like, if I didn't have my minis or anything like that I could use, that what I basically do, like for example, that whenever that my players that they had went up against the hot scales up in one of my games, it is basically for Nox. Just think like Borderlands meet like a lizard folk gang invading a halfling village. But anyway, then that I don't have a quicksand terrain mini. So what I basically did was basically took out a different color just marker and just basically drew like a spiral and just basically like put like I think that it was a 10 to 20 foot drop or something like that, and it was just basically that letting my players know this is quicksand. For the most part, they had avoided it and didn't get trapped into the quicksand. So I definitely would count the map as terrain, because that, using just at the example of just at the rock, for example, you just draw some squiggly lines and place it and just like label it rock. Players, mini or else whatever that they are using to represent their character, that they will know that there is a rock blocking their line of sight and that they will have to go around it. So yes, I 100% agree that the map does count as terrain.
I'm going to play odd man out here and say that terrain only counts, like as a definition. I am only going to call something terrain if it's a 3-dimensional piece that I'm putting on the table in representation or depiction of something in the game. Everything else is just map and cartography. It's not the same thing as terrain, but that's just me being a literal category autism brain. It's not the right answer or the wrong answer. It's just my answer. Well, terrain is only 3-dimensional stuff.
Well, there is no right or wrong answer with this, because right now the tone I've gotten from everybody is, with exception nation, it is, yeah, maybe, but it feels like it defeats the purpose of the thing. It takes the spirit out of it a little bit, though, right?
Yeah.
Now, moving past with this, I'm going to ask y'all because we got a panel full of DMs tonight. What is your favorite piece of improvisational terrain you have had to put on the table because of bullshit your party pulled? And I'm not talking minis.
Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon.
I was gonna say not talking minis. I'm talking about like.
Can I go first?
Go ahead.
So this last week, my players were in a situation where they were having some battle stuff between two very they're like the Argonath statues flanking the river in Fellowship of the Ring, giant stone statues at the shoulders of two mountains and the pass, like guarding the pass between the mountains. And in the base of those statues are tunnel doorways leading into the mountains, like at where the heels of the feet of the statues come together. So their plan was to find a boulder and have the Rune Knight grow a size larger, so that he could roll one of the boulders and plug up the mouth of one of these tunnels, and they could wall of force the other one until they were ready to deal with whatever was coming out of it. So I pulled out my my Nordic Forge boulder D20. It's a solid stone, polished black stone D20, and that was the boulder that the Eldritch Knight was pushing. It wasn't a mini; it was a piece of quote terrain, a giant like 75 mil D20.
The boulder.
All right.
I couldn't resist.
Dice in general. It's all right. All right. The D4s are giant spiders. The D6s are the assholes that y'all are fighting, and the D20 is the big scary thing you don't know what it is. Go.
That I would have to say that like Miro and Neysa, basically that you all know how I love my cart shenanigan traps. So I have a lot of mini just dry erase markers that I like to use as carts because that I have my players fall for the oldest trick in the book. Like an abandoned, like child is, parents are being mauled, but it's actually bandits are trying to take over. And in that, we have actually had like races before with 2 dry erase markers serving as carts and stuff like that, because then that is the closest thing that I have that is like rectangle shaped to basically fit a cart. So there we go.
I have thrown more than once the box that my pin set comes in out to function as a barricade. Also, I have bought multiple acrylic cut magic effect symbols to throw out there occasionally because somebody decides that, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to make a giant wall of fire. And before I bought those little acrylic things, I just crumpled up red paper and threw them out there. It's like, all right, here's where the wall is. So I've also seen people just throw pencils to make castle walls before. And I always like when it's like, oh shit, I don't have anything for this. I got to give them something to make it work. With that being said, let's move to the next thing. So that's improv. In any in-person game you've actually played in, has terrain actually made it more difficult to get into that session than not?
Can we define get into? Do we mean get into the headspace or literally just
yeah, get in the headspace. Was there terrain that was put out that became distracting for what you were doing at the time?
I'll say yes, but not like it wasn't game ending really. Spencer, in your last shop game, do you remember the little, they were like wall tiles? I think Nigel had brought them. Do you remember those?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was kind of good and bad. It was good to be able to actually have like, these are the walls of our guild house. That's the building across the street. Literally being able to visualize this enormous fight that was happening right outside our guild house. But it made it difficult because one of my characters at the time was on like an upper floor, and so I kept trying to have my mini be stacked on top of one of those walls, and it kept falling. So it was more just it wasn't that the terrain itself was a bad idea. The terrain itself was a good idea, but the urge to want to utilize it in a way that it wasn't quite stable enough for made myself distract myself, if that makes sense.
I mean, that as being just at the DM of that game and such, that, that it was a great gesture that I had players say, like, oh yeah, man, that I can bring my minis and stuff. That we had like one guy that he was like an older gentleman. He was like really, really into the hobby, but his work shift was just too crazy and hectic. And then he had to drop out and stuff. And then that, for me personally, terrain, while it is like visually appealing and such as far as in, that you can set it up and stuff, that I would say that it'll be more situational. Like say for example that my players have another attack on that their guild house, and then that I was able to basically build out the guild house with just like the see-through floors, so that way that the players can basically see like who is on the first, who's on the second, and who is on the third floor up in just at their penthouse suite or whatever. And then it's just basically, that you can see that along with the other map. That situation is fine, but you come with the caveat of it takes time to set up, and also especially up in like a personal games shop setting that you may run the risk of like a player or else a store patron basically touching it by accident up in just a certain kind of way, and then like destroying your hard work. It is just like that the dude that on like the Lego builders is just like, oh, I want to touch this Harley or motorcycle you built, and all of the Legos shatter.
See, the only time I've had terrain actually get distracting for me, and it wasn't actually in a game I was in, it was because somebody had terrain that lighted up in one of the Warhammer games at our local game shop. And my ADD brain just kept kicking in when it's like, oh, the volcano is about to erupt, because it just had like a flickering. It was a tea light. It was a tea light inside of a whole bunch of foam, but it distracted me because the way everything was positioned in the shop before they moved, that was right next to where we were playing. So all of a sudden I would just see it flickering over somebody's shoulder and I would get a little distracted. But again, that's not the terrain's fault. That's my ADD brain.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of, the only time I've ever played with terrain is at Extra Life weekends, just simply because I don't use any because I ain't got none. The only thing I could see that would is if there's too much, if it's too detailed. It's one of the things I've always said about like a Critical Role. Them having an overhead camera has got to be the only way that they could really do that for some of those fights, because the building up the walls and multiple levels and being able to see from anywhere from where you're sitting to play, and it's got to be kind of a headache. That's the only thing that I can really think of, because like I said, I don't have, so I don't use. Everything that I do is all map.
All right, and to end what probably could be considered the negative view on this, and Knox has kind of mentioned this and Spence kind of mentioned this already, what is the one major drawback, as far as you feel, to terrain?
It's got to be story.
100% with you on that one.
Got to be. Like there is my storage solution for a lot of my D&D stuff, especially for some of my bigger stuff, once we build the house, is we're going to have a gaming nook. It's going to be like a 10 foot by 15, like 10 by 15 foot area in the house that is strictly the gaming space. That's where all the games are going to be stored on shelves on the wall, and everything else. My plan is to actually run a shelf along the entirety of the, on top of all the bookshelves and stuff like that. Have a shelf between the top of the bookshelves and the ceiling to give me another shelf, and that's where a lot of the big stuff is going to go. Just to be able to have that. Also, by that point, I'll have dedicated storage space and expandable storage space for those things. It is legitimately the reason why I don't use terrain. I haven't even attempted to try to make terrain. I don't know how well I would make terrain because I've never tried, and I don't plan on it because it doesn't. I ain't got nowhere to put it, so I ain't gonna try.
That's pretty much where I am with it. That I have tried to make it before that. Just following those terrain guys on YouTube that I can think of at the moment. But it is the storage part for me because as that Neysa can see, my office is literally a cluster of my art stuff, and plus it is also our laundry room. So then that I have very limited space, but also another negative would be like travel with it too, because that it is basically you have to treat it like your baby, that you have basically made this elegant, like I'm gonna just say fort that you want your players to basically go in and such, and then that you are driving down the road and then that you hit a pothole or else a crater in our town, and would you know it that that the flag or else a wall or something fell off, and then that you don't have time to basically doctor it up and stuff because that you got a game in 10 minutes. So it's just travel and storage with it are my two negatives.
I'm gonna say the biggest drawback is terrain envy. We've talked about like the really good like Dwarven Forge stuff that Critical Role and Dimension 20 and other places, other groups and organizations have access to, and even the stuff that Hewitt has, like being not jealous but desirous of wanting to be able to have something that you don't have, and I feel like it could become a spiral of once have had will always want more, and therefore it becomes a cyclical downward shoot of needing the more space, needing more time, more cash or whatever, all of that jazz, because that's kind of what I would say is terrain envy, because you're always gonna, maybe not you, but me, I would always want to be constantly improving and expanding if I ever actually had the opportunity and the ability to take that dive. So.
All right, now to flip that one on inverse, what is your favorite thing about terrain, though?
It absolutely helps promote immersion. There's, if you got really cool things on the table, it is less likely that your players will be staring at their phones.
I got to agree with that element of visual storytelling, especially for like our Into the Woods games, that those trees brought us into it even more, because it literally made us feel like whenever we were first dropped in, then that we were just like these adventurers, and then we just got literally stuck in the mud, surrounded by like these, I think it was like centipedes or whatever we were up against for like that first game, that had basically brought the element of the DM's phys- immersion level great for us, and then it basically adds on to that visual storytelling aspect, and then it just sets the scene a lot more. That is the best thing about terrain.
I'll say the creativity that terrain engenders in both DMs and players. When you're I hate to say limited, but when you're limited to only a two-dimensional map, it can become tiresome on the creative energy to think about how to utilize a three-dimensional space that you cannot see in its entirety. With terrain at your disposal, you can create a space that provides those ingenious opportunities both for players to utilize their mechanics or their class features or even just the terrain itself as an element of a battle sequence that they otherwise might struggle to effect and make happen. Additionally, it provides those opportunities for the DM to stretch their creative muscles and to kind of I can imagine how, like, if I was actually able to sit down and be creating terrain out of foam and paint and paper mache and whatnot, my brain would be constantly running through ideas and scenarios. There would be a notepad at my elbow that would get filled up by the time I was done creating the setting for the next sequence, of just ideas that because when your hands are moving, your brain is free to do other things. I'd say that it's even beyond the immersion. It opens that avenue for out of the box thinking when there's more space to play with and more surface area to observe.
My favorite thing about terrain is twofold. The first one is I love to make it. Grave and Nate, they paint minis, and Knox too. Painting minis to me is a bit of a chore sometimes. Like I think I've done almost a month and a half of podcast saying I really need to paint these zombies off to my left, and they're still not fully painted. But making and painting terrain is a little bit therapeutic to me. Of taking like pink insulation foam, which Spence has filled up my closet with, so now I have no excuse not to make something big and dumb for everybody to deal with at some point. I love to make it. The other thing I really love is when you put terrain down and everybody gets excited. There are two pieces of terrain up at... Actually, no, there's three pieces of terrain that are up at A&H right now, our local store, that I made, that the second I dropped them, folks got excited. Like there is the impaled angel that I used for Avernus that has been, like, I put that down and you can literally climb around this, in proportion would be like 100-foot tall skeleton. And you could move all around it. There's multiple places to position yourself. You could you could stand on the thing's head. And in fact, one of the players made sure to do that before I took that their mini did that, I should say, before we put it up. And then when it got put up at the game shop, I've seen that on a table for a lot of Warhammer. The next is the arena that I made for one of the last games for my Avernus campaign. And when I put down like this, 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot bowl of terrain, everybody got excited because it's like we get to play on that. And it was awesome. And then there's the last one that has been dubbed Pinor Rock by Cliff, our local game shop. manager because I made a rock and I thought it looked kind of like a snake. I was informed by other people it didn't look like a snake, so I tried to cover up with moss. That made it worse. And so that piece of terrain became a huge joke, and everybody still laughed about it at the table, and it occasionally still pops up in a war game up at A&H, and again, people still laugh at it. And to me, even though that's not what I wanted that piece of terrain to be associated with, the fact that people liked it was exciting. Especially since Pinot Rock is made out of spray insulation that you get in the can. Which, if anybody wanted to make really cheap terrain, all you need is Mod Podge and a $5 can of spray foam and a knife. Because that'll do it. But just the fact of making it is cathartic for me and relaxing, and watching people's expressions when they see it out there because they get to enjoy it and do stuff with it. And you start seeing them have ideas run through their heads about what they're going to do with it. Like the Tabaxi Rogue deciding that they got to take a flying leap off the tip of Pinot Rock. So that's my favorite part about terrain.
Yeah, it definitely adds and definitely keeps it keeps your players engaged for sure, and also it drives that creativity of maybe they wouldn't have done near that cool a thing had it if you had just described what was there instead of them being able to see it.
Right, right. And then even if that you don't have the skill necessary to basically make terrain and stuff, that there is always YouTube videos on it. You can go to your craft stores, your Joann's, your Michael's, etc. And then you can go by either that the hobby section or else by that the children's section, that they will have like toys, and then they have like these mini bushes, trees and such, and then that for like people use on like dioramas that is a relatively inexpensive option to use if that you want to make some quick and just easy terrain if you want.
I'll chime in on that. My favorite store to go to for building terrain is Home Depot. Knox can attest to this, as I've been a steampunk for years. So misappropriating hardware to make something cosmetic or costume or fanciful is a skill that I've had for a minute. And anytime I've built terrain, it is going to be most recently, it's going to be the purple insulation foam that comes in a 3/4 inch and a 1/2 inch density. You can cut that with a knife or a hot wire cutter, and you can then go get silicone caulk from the paint aisle and mix it with baking soda, and it'll harden as hard as a rock. So I go to the hardware store to get stuff for D&D.
All right, that skill is always gonna, regardless on what you do, is always gonna Home Depot is a great place for card game accessories.
Or you go to Walmart, you hit the back section, and they have their part sorter. They're like $10, and that is what I put all my minis in because they click together.
Yeah, you can, and then there the storage options available. For the storage option, just the storage options are out of this world when you go to a home improvement store. But even making, once you, and Hewitt can attest to this, something that him and I learned through steampunk is once you get it through your thick damn brain that doesn't go together. It can though. And you should do it. Screwing two things together that ain't supposed to be screwed together sometimes comes out with something really, really cool. And once you wrap your head around that and actually start playing around with that, you will find different ways to make different things.
Now, last question before we do our insight check. When it comes to streaming, because this is something we all do, does terrain become slightly more necessary? Because it's not just you and your players, there's also the potential of people watching at home. So with streaming, does that make terrain slightly more necessary?
Necessary? No. Optimal? Yes. I think it would. I think it absolutely would. It absolutely makes it a whole lot more appealing, and it is much easier to keep viewers engaged when they can really see what's going on real time with terrain and with these 3-dimensional maps. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. And as long as it's easy to see what's going on, it's 100% not necessary. Does it make it better? Yes, if it's done right. I mean, there's been a few episodes of some of the more popular D&D real plays on that you watch. Man, those terrain pieces of 3D maps are amazing. I have no idea where the fuck anything is, though.
From a professional standpoint, I would say that it can up your professional quality as far as in, giving it more a visual appeal for like your audience. Not just as Knox says. However, also as a viewer, sometimes it does get a bit cluttered whenever that it is too much on the screen, because that, at least for my take, yeah, that that the terrain and stuff that they make is cool, but I am there for the story of these characters and such. That the storytelling is what I came for, that the prop, aka that the terrain piece just ups the production quality for me. So, optimal, yes. 100% necessary, depends on your goals, pretty much.
I'd agree, for the most part, with optimal, yes. Necessary, no. I will say that, I don't know if caution's the right word, but expectations need to be managed, both as when you're looking at it from the perspective of a creator, a producer, a streamer. Expectations should be managed both for yourself and for your potential audience. The Matt Mercer effect is dangerous when we start applying it to things that can become quite costly in terms of financial. The reason that Critical Role, Dimension 20, not another D&D podcast, Dungeons and Daddies, the reason that they have those amazing pieces of terrain or those amazing equipment that they use to create their streams is because they already have gotten over that hump of having significant incoming funds. They have the money to throw around for it.
It's also a business expense. So
yeah,
that's that I think that is probably the one of the biggest things in the back of Matt Mercer's mind is I can buy anything that I want, and it's a tax write-off.
Indeed, but as primarily I think for most of us, primarily as hobby streamers and not necessarily professional streamers, there needs to be some managing of expectations. Like, yeah, it's good to have a goal to where you could be like, yes, down the line, I would absolutely want to have these epic pieces of terrain so that I could provide that quality of experience to my viewers. But it's a marathon, not a sprint, I think is the maximum going for there. It is not something that can or should be done overnight. And it's something to work toward if it is something you want to do.
I mean, my view on it is it's not necessary unless that is what you're going for. If you want to go for a stream that is much more visual when you're doing this, and you want to have something in the middle that everybody can look at, and if it's an in-person game, you want to build the terrain yourself, that's great. It's not necessary, again, unless you want that visual element to be a part of it, and that's something you have to decide streaming-wise if you want to do that beforehand. Like, not gonna lie, one reason I've made so much big, chunky, cartoonish terrain is my house is where we play at. So if a DM wants the option, I made that terrain. If they choose not to use it, it stays in a Tupperware container underneath my couch. When I run a game, if I want to build terrain, I'm going to throw it out there. But if I'm doing Monster of the Week, I don't worry about terrain because Monster of the Week is a game that is very narrative. Like Crescendo of Violence and Blades in the Dark, all narrative. So, like the two other games I really want to run sometime next year, because I would say this year, but y'all, everybody knows that here after a little while, my year no longer is active with TBA. They're narrative, so I don't have to put that terrain out. It's really nice to have for people to look at, but like we've been saying this entire time, it's not necessary. It's just the pretty extra. And before we jump into the insight check, Neysa, you mentioned something, and I want to make sure we clarify this because my brain did this. It's Dungeons and Daddies. Don't Google Dungeon Daddies. You will find things that you were not looking for. Trust me. You will
Or that you
I
are
did not
looking for.
enunciate clearly.
No, I know what my brain did, and I want to make sure it's out there because I have hey, I've heard of this podcast. So I type in Dungeon Daddies. It is not what I expected, nor what I was looking for. I will not yuck anybody's yum in that situation, but it was not what I was looking for.
Correct. Dungeons and Daddies. Like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's Dungeons and Daddies.
Now all I can think of somebody trying to say that the dragon is a daddy, and now I can think is Claire talking about
Also,
the
yes.
Spyro game. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's roll some motherfucking dice.
Okay, so everybody roll a d20. I'll start, then Neysa, then Spence, then Knox on what we rolled. I got a 2.
16.
7.
Neysa wins.
Okay, so
I win.
I got I rolled a 15.
All right, Knox, to explain what insight check is, it's the rehashing of investigation check. Whoever wins the roll gets to give us a fact, and we get to say whether or not, based on our own gut, if we think they're telling the truth or we think it's bullshit.
Okay, so I, Neysa, have set foot or wheel in 37 of the 50 United States.
I mean, you've driven to California, so I'm going to say that's true.
Considering the fact of that your license plates is somewhere that I never been, because the farthest up north I've been is Missouri, and then I'm like, why the hell would I go to that place on just your license plate? So I'm going to definitely say that it is true.
Uh, I will say false, strictly to be strictly to get some spice in this. However, I would like to say that with the caveat of I really don't have a dog in this fight, just simply because I haven't had the chance to I haven't really had a chance to sit and hang out with Neysa. Like talking about it during the extra lives. We've played in plenty of games, but just like sitting on the back patio, bullshit and hanging out. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So I don't really have a dog in this fight. But also, I'm gonna just go ahead and say false, just to add some spice.
Okay, so it is true. I set a low threshold of insight for that one. It is true. The only states that I haven't been to at all in any way, shape, or form are Alaska, Hawaii, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then like the most of the Northeast, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Pennsylvania, New York, Delaware, and Connecticut, and New Jersey. I have been to both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I actually flew into the Rhode Island airport, met my internet best friend in Boston, and bought her car, which is why my license plates are Massachusetts, because I still have yet to change them over.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you you're not missing anything by not going to Jersey.
A additional slight fun fact, though, on top of that, is I literally know someone who has either lived or worked in every one of those states that I have never been to. So I can play 6 degrees of literally every state in the country, which is fun.
Neat.
Now, the other thing I did as a follow-up, because I think I had one, I think Emily might have had one. It doesn't necessarily just have to be a fact about us, it's just something else. But I brought up the history of a word that ended up actually being debatable. But without Googling it, I'm going through some Victorian language here. So, again, do not look it up. Knee-jerk reaction. What does this phrase mean? Umble come stumble. Umble come stumble.
Pride goeth before the fall.
I am going to basically going to say that you have to that you have to basically at least attempt and realize that you are going to fail, but that way that you are learning something, pretty much. So basically, try it out and fail to see that if that you like it or not.
I'm gonna go with the walk home. The walk home after the pub.
It means thoroughly understood. I'm sorry. I had the choice between 2 different phrases, but this one was umble come stumble. And the infantile humor that I have went, go with that one.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out.
Understood.
I'm trying to figure out how the fuck it means that. What the fuck?
It's like saying bang up the elephant type situation. It's a Victorian slang phrase that very understandably is no longer in our lexicon.
You want to bet you just used it?
Mm-hmm.
I did, but that means it's now been added to your lexicon.
No, Hewitt.
I
Understood.
There's a guy I play with on alternate Wednesdays. His current phrase of choice is fair dinkum, but he says it with an American accent every time, and every single time I can't help thinking about the Irwins out of Australia, because it's like that's their phrase of choice is fair dinkum. And so I'm like, why are you not saying it with an Australian accent? Why are you saying it with an American accent? It makes no sense.
Because it's funnier.
Right. I had always used to say just basically instead of just like from Kurt Vonnegut's So It Goes, I always say dilly dally shilly shally. Hewitt knows the reference.
Yep. Whoa, that was a big lightning flash. So, again, ADD kicking in. So, we've hit that timeline right now. So, I want to thank the panel for sitting in here and talking. I'm going to pitch another idea, and then we will start hopefully rotating who is in charge of bonus roundtable. I'll post up either tonight or tomorrow what our next one is, but it's probably not going to be necessarily RPG related. So that's the only hint I'll give. Let's see, socials. We're Team Bonus Action at Facebook, YouTube, and here on Twitch, and our website, teambonusaction.com. We are also until they make us pay, we are at bonus_team on Twitter. We are also Team Bonus Action on Instagram, which might start having more posts on it. So that's all of our socials upcoming. Tomorrow we'll be back with Holy Winds, and Thursday we'll be back with Tears of Kairos. And next Sunday, after almost 2 months off, we will be back with a kitchen table. And there are more Zillow links than I am comfortable with. Knox in that thread.
Oh yeah, because now we've got your wife, my wife, and Claire that's putting in work on this. So we're boned, partner.
Oh no, I've added one in there that'll be the palate cleanser for us next Sunday. It'll make us all slightly happy. Anyway, Knox is actually here, so
we appreciate y'all hanging out tonight. We hope we're at least a little bit of entertainment, maybe a little bit educational, maybe a little edutational. I'm not going to use that word anymore because it didn't come out right. Until next time, folks, don't let your meatloaf.